Hey, we're here at Chicago's famous Millennium Park. Behind me is the iconic bean. When people think of Chicago, this is actually one of the images that they have. Talking about images, specifically thinking about our images of God, have you ever stopped to wonder where your image of God actually comes from? You know, those mental images that all of us have about God, if we were to stop and close our eyes, what would God actually look like? I mean, here's what I want you to do. I actually want you to literally close your eyes for a second and try and imagine God. Seriously, like wherever you're at right now, close your eyes and try and imagine what God must look like. Do it for like just a second. All right, you can open your eyes again. My hunch is this: God is probably like an old man, right? Your mental image of him may be him sitting on a throne with a big, long, white, flowing beard. Have you ever even stopped to think about where that image actually comes from for you? You know, I personally blame Michelangelo. Now, I don't have anything against him, like personally, per se. It's just that he has so greatly messed with our image of God. You know, in his historic Sistine Chapel painting called The Creation of Adam, Michelangelo masterfully created an image of God that I think honestly existed well before he ever picked up a brush. It's an image of God that continues to appear on the canvas of our minds to this very day. Now, the painting itself is, I think, a beautiful portrayal of God reaching out of the glory of heaven to a sort of half-hearted lounging Adam. God reaching out to his creation. That is a beautiful image. I don't have a problem with that. But my problem is with that actual image of God. It's just that he's so, old looking. I mean, he's old with this big, long, white, flowing beard like a elderly hipster, you know? His face kind of weather-worn, one hand sort of reaching out to Adam, the other reaching back for a glass of Metamucil. I mean, it's this message that Michelangelo in his masterpiece was painting for all of us, and it's simply this: that God is old. Now, it's hard to imagine God for us any other way, because our understanding of time is so tied to our little brief existence that we have. We can't help but think of our lives with a beginning and a middle and an end, that things sort of start and then they finish. We don't know what eternal looks like, so we try and fill in the blanks with the closest thing we have to it, which is the oldest things we can think of, which for many of us is our grandpa. Now, Grandpa obviously isn't eternal, but he's been around a lot longer than any of us have. And if God was here way before Grandpa entered the scene, then God must be really, really old, like a sweet old man. And unlike other cultures around the world where people actually honor and respect the elderly, we here in America, we're afraid of it. Like we don't want anything to do with old, because in our culture, old is a bother. Old is a burden. It's out of touch, and the old is not what it used to be. And while it may be impossible for us to sort of pinpoint exactly where this image of an old God came from, it's not hard for us to figure out where it leads. See, what it leads us to is a God. If he's old, then he's past his prime. He's out of touch, over the hill, outdated, overrated, and unconnected to the world that we live in. And whether we realize it or not, we treat God like that. We treat God like he's a sweet old grandpa living in some retirement community somewhere in Boca Raton, Florida. And with that image in our mind of God, we can continue to sort of have the best of both worlds, honestly. Right? Listen, students, we don't have to worry about sort of the constant, daily, annoying presence of an active God in our lives as long as he's old. In fact, we don't even have to really think about God all that much if we don't want to. And the chance that we do want to actually talk with him, he's only a phone call away. We can sort of just call him every now and then when things get kind of tough or we need someone to talk to. So we can see him whenever we want, maybe like at Christmas or on Easter. You see how our God kind of becomes sort of like a grandpa. All right, now look, I know that some of this may seem like a bit extreme, right? But just think about this for a second. The longer we see God as just an old man, the more it begins to affect everything else we see. So what do? We lower our expectations and we sort of settle for a God who may have given us our first push, but who we passed up years and years ago. And if God is nothing more than just a sweet old man, then it changes how we see the Bible. I mean, the customs and cultures of the Bible are, for lack of a better word, ancient. And even the language, it kind of reeks of oldness. You know, if thou doth partaketh in thine own folly, then thou shalt faileth thy Lord. I mean, it's honestly like reading Shakespeare your freshman year in high school and pretending that you like it, or even that you understand it. See, we do our best to sort of connect the dots, but there's just no getting around that if God's an old man, then the Bible is just an old book. Then stop and think about, our everyday struggles, what we face on a daily basis. As long as God is just an old man, then our struggles are really something that He just doesn't understand. God obviously can't understand the sort of complexities of our everyday life, of the internet. God couldn't possibly comprehend the complexity of the stuff that we struggle with there. He's possibly just too nice and old to understand the anger that rages beneath the surface of some of our lives, if we're being really honest. God's views on sexuality may seem so old-fashioned that it's impossible for Him to understand what we actually face on a daily basis, or to accept us exactly as we are today, especially after all that we've done. See, the longer we keep God confined to our concept of time, the older and older and older He gets. Ultimately, we can't help but keep thinking of God in terms of our limited and finite reality, but deep down, I know, deep down, our hope is that He actually is a supreme being who is above all this and has power over all this and can actually save us from all this. That He actually is bigger and above and beyond and before us and this whole world. The truth that existed long before us and before this world, before anything even existed, is that there was God. That means that even before there was time, there was God. That He existed outside of anything we could ever imagine or hope for, and that He still does. So what if there's a better framework for God? A better word other than just old? What if a better word for God is timeless? See, if God were limited to our understanding of time, then like all things in the universe, He would be aging, deteriorating, dying. He couldn't be the same today as He was yesterday or millions and millions of years ago, for that matter. And He wouldn't be the same tomorrow as He is today. If He were subject to time, then He would change with time. But if time were something that God was not actually bound to, well, then that actually could change everything, including our perception of Him. Because that means that God is just as capable, just as powerful, just as ready to do amazing things in our lives and in our world today as He has done throughout history. What if God is still moving in and around and among us as He always has? What if God has just as much love and interest in you and your life today as He did in the lives of Moses and King David and Peter and, well, your grandpa, for that matter? What if our lives were less about following God, but rather more about trying to keep up with a God who is active and dynamic and on the move right now, today, in your life, just as He's always been. A God who is and was and will forever be above and beyond time, ageless from generation to generation. There's a passage in the Bible that says this about our ageless God. that earth and sky, what we see around us, will wear out, but not you. They become threadbare like an old coat. You, God, you fold them up like a worn out cloak and lay them away on the shelf. But you'll stay the same year after year. You'll never fade. You'll never wear out. Thank God. I thank God that He's not bound to my understanding of time, that He's not just the old man that I imagine in my head. Thank God that He exists outside of our little constructs that we've created for Him, and yet He still chooses to step into our everyday lives every day. And He brings with Him, like He always has, a power that is perfect and complete, not growing or fading away or diminishing, but exactly what we need right now, today.